On behalf of the Natural Stone Institute and Stone World Magazine, thank you for joining us for today's session, Selling Natural Stone, Building Your Company's Sales Structure. We have a great program planned for you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce G.K. Nakhan. G.K. Nakhan has over 48 years experience in the natural stone industry. He and his partners own Stone Interiors North America, a large fabrication company with 3 locations in the Southeast. GK's accomplishments include the 2004 Pinnacle Award for Special Use of Stone, 2005 Stone World Magazine Fabricator of the Year. GK also served as the 2011 President of the Natural Stone Institute Board of Directors and received the Migliore Lifetime Achievement Award. GK often provides independent consulting services to fabrication facilities and travels the country providing educational seminars at various industry-related events such as Stone Expo, Coverings, K-Biz, and the Stone Industry Education Series. Please welcome GK Nakhan.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks for participating in our education series today. As you will find out, education is a passion for me and, of course, all of our panelists today. I'd like to first have each of our panelists introduce themselves and kind of give a little bit of brief history of your experience in the natural stone industry. And Darcy, Daisha, we'll start with you.
Thank you, GK. My name is Daisha Whitworth. I have been in the natural stone industry since 2001. Before that, I worked for a construction management firm. I worked for an electrical contractor and a landscape contractor. So most of my career, I've been in the built industry. I was blessed enough to be offered a job in 2001 by Gerald Gallegos of the Gallegos Corporation. And that is where my passion for natural stone began and continues. So I am now currently with the Natural Stone Institute. I've been here about 3 years, and I'm just great and lucky and thrilled to be here.
Great. Thanks, Daisha. Brett.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brett Rugo, president and owner of Rugo Stone. We're a natural stone contractor and fabricator located just outside of Washington, D.C., and we work throughout the Mid-Atlantic area. We focus on commercial buildings, high-end residences, and we do quite a bit of artistic work in the liturgical Catholic Church community. My firm is about 25 years old. I've been working in the stone industry since 1981, I believe. I was born in Barre, Vermont, to immigrants from Italy who were stone carvers. And so at the earliest stages, I've been exposed to natural stonework all of my life. And it's been a passion to do that. I was the president of the Natural Stone Institute, formerly known as the MIA, in 2010, and I served on the board for 7 years. So I'm here today to give some insight and perspective on the commercial sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it. Well, Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. Today we're going to handle basically, or actually address, 3 major areas that we're concerned that we want to put some education together with. One is the defining the commercial sales customer and how we attract them and work with them. The second will be connecting with the design community. And then the third, again, will be securing contracts. What are some of the important aspects of the contract that we make sure we protect ourselves in? So with that said, we'll go into MSI. MSI is the host of our events.
MSI is North America's largest independent source of countertop, flooring, wall tile, and hardscaping surfaces. For over 40 years, MSI has sourced the globe for the highest quality hard surfaces on trend designs and has grown to over $1.5 billion in annual revenues. Our product lines include the broadest selection of quartz and natural stone countertops, luxury vinyl tile, porcelain and natural stone tile, decorative mosaics, pebbles, stacked stone, and pavers. With over 2,000 employees and over 30 showroom and distribution centers in the United States and Canada, we actively service every channel, including fabricators, retailers, builders, contractors, kitchen and bath dealers, mass merchants, architects, designers, and hospitality. Our distribution infrastructure includes importing over 50,000 containers per year and a company-owned delivery fleet of over 200 trucks. MSI can deliver anywhere in the continental United States within 48 hours. Our information technology systems report real-time inventory, so our trade partners know exactly what's in stock and how quickly they can receive it. Our business is agile and designed for growth. We adapt to the needs of our customers. From our latest venture, a domestic manufacturing plant for quartz countertops, to being on the leading edge of augmented reality to improve the consumer shopping experience. We've become the preferred supplier because we are creative, innovative and curious, savvy, professional and smart, flexible, open-minded and adaptable, cooperative, collaborative and responsive. This mindset allows us to deliver the greatest assortment, affordable products, accessible inventory, and attentive service. At the center of global operations is our 26-acre headquarters in Orange, California. The facility is a testament to our core commitments. In addition to stocking tens of millions of square feet of inventory, we employ over 200 corporate employees in key functional areas, including sourcing, logistics, operations, marketing, accounting, and information technology. Our operations team employs the latest technology and equipment to provide best-in-class distribution to our customers. Our sample board processing department produces custom solutions for thousands of our customer showrooms each year. Experts across our organization are committed to providing our customers an elevated experience. From customer service to trend and design, MSI provides inspiration. Customer service professionals in our showroom guide you through the industry's top trending residential and commercial surfaces. Our slab yards capture the beauty of quartz, granite, marble, and other countertop surfaces. Online and in our showrooms, we use product stories and technology to show our customers what's possible. The more immersive, the better. MSI's marketing, merchandising, and design teams are committed to providing an elevated and curated shopping experience. A full array of tools are available for our customers: website, room scene photography, displays, brochures, training modules, and trend and design collateral. We are future-focused, identifying and investing in categories that will transform the marketplace. MSI, making dream surfaces attainable.
Okay. We have our first poll question posted now, and Aaron is going to give a couple of minutes to answer the question. It shouldn't take too long. It just has your business participated in commercial contracts in the past. As we have a varied audience in our event today, some of us being commercial contractors, some of us being residential contractors or countertop fabricators that are looking to get into commercial, it's important we know where we're going. It'll help Brett and every one of us assist in some good questions. How did that poll come out, Aaron? Oh, there it is. So great. So we've had 89% participate in commercial venues or contracts, which is a lot surprising to me for our presentation. What I'd like to do is go ahead and get into the commercial customers. And, when we look at commercial contracts, there are a couple of differences in the type of commercial we do. Those of us who do, like myself, do a lot of currently are doing mainly countertop commercial and not necessarily exterior skins or other large commercial projects. And there's like Brett, who does just about all commercial projects, including architectural. Brett, why don't you take a couple of minutes now and give us kind of a, what a competitive bid and the different types of contracts you go through.
Okay, so, the word commercial needs a little definition. Commercial to me means anything that's really not residential. Commercial includes institutional buildings, museums, landscapes, large parks. It includes Class A office buildings, sometimes Class B office buildings, generally in urban settings. And commercial would include the exterior cladding of a building, the landscaping element around the perimeter, and of course, decorative marble lobbies, and oftentimes core bathrooms. I think commercial is also applied to folks in the counter industry because there's so much high-rise residential work going on. We don't really participate in that. We've done a few. It's not really our niche. And that's also commercial work because it's vertically challenged because of the logistics of moving the material. So what types of contracts do we see? Most of the contracts that we see are hard bid. They're based upon a set of contract documents and specifications that define all the requirements you need to perform to complete the work. Hard bid means that a set of documents have been prepared. You prepare a proposal for the scope you desire to do. You tender a price, generally to a construction manager or a general contractor. It gets evaluated, and hopefully you get a chance to negotiate. The other types of contracts, which are obviously preferred, are contracts that are negotiated. And negotiated contracts generally start with a lot of pre-construction services, oftentimes unpaid consulting periods where you do sampling, design systems, perhaps engineering input on how a system is going to perform on the wall and what that system includes. It's not, our industry on exterior cladding is really not just stone. It's all of the support systems, the insulation, what we call the air, water, vapor barrier, the entire envelope of the building. Negotiated contracts are few and far between, unfortunately, but they are still preferred because you get into the job early and you get a chance to get your expertise, your input, your strengths built into the requirements. To do that, you need an active client. Clients are usually developers or architects who want your expertise and want you to contribute to the buildability of the project. Architects in many cases have become a little bit generalist. They're still very, very good designers, but they're not always system people and not always the most mechanical people when it comes to all the little assemblies that are required to properly attach the stone to the building, depending on the performance requirements. So those are kind of the two contracts that we see repetitively is the hard bid, which is most of the marketplace. And then if your company is engaged in pre-construction services, you can often facilitate the ability to negotiate at least an enhanced position for a hard bid or potentially negotiate a final price based upon all your hard work, which could be 18 months, 2 years, even longer, to build up a body of knowledge for the architect and the engineer of record on just how to do it and where to procure it.
Okay. Brett, how do you build some of these relationships when you talk about the relationship of up front? How do you go about building that relationship with the contractors and or the architect community?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to have tangible experience and you got to be a good communicator. If you don't have experience, genuinely deep experience in the field that you're proposing to discuss or negotiate on and consult on, the attention span of the end user won't last very long. So optimally, anybody that you have out doing business development has got to have a couple of decades or at least 10 years in the place and fully understand not only all the variety of materials, but their weaknesses, pros and cons, accessibility, panel sizes, uses, recommended uses, non-uses. So really, it's competency from the front end. And then you have to go out and communicate that service exists and that you're willing to participate and help people get up to speed on what is available and how it can be attached. This takes a lot of time. You need brand recognition to get attention from those that are in need of that information. So I think the short answer is you've got to have quite a few years in the business. You've got to have had an exposure to a lot of different types of systems, a lot of different types of stone. And based upon their feedback, you will find out as to whether or not your competency is being appreciated and valued. And as your reputation grows for your consulting ability, so will your opportunities. Oftentimes architects between studios know one another, they share leads. Oftentimes they're competitors and don't want to share their resources for consulting. So you just got to get out there and find out who's current, who's in your marketplace, who's dominant, and introduce yourself at the lowest level and then work your way up, hopefully to the principal level. And as you get older and as time goes on, the people you worked with that were 20 will someday be 50, and they'll be in senior positions, and they'll be willing to listen to you because you have a track record. So it's sort of a long road, but if you're steady with it, you keep chipping away, I have found that you'll get a lot of advocates. Of course, you have to be very careful because most of this consulting is gratis. They don't seem to have a lot of disposable funds yet for stone consulting at the earliest phases. So it's really part of our own internal promotional efforts and costs to market and maintain our brand reputation.
Brett, I've noticed in the industry today that many commercial projects, and what you and I consider commercial projects, are actually designed projects where engineers design anchoring systems and so forth. There are a lot of companies out there that smaller commercial builders are going to tile companies or fabricators and so forth because they've had relationships with them and trying to get them to build buildings. You and I have had a couple of relationships with our companies lately where we've come across another company trying to do some exterior skins, and it's not our niche. And as a fabricator of countertops and showers, we do a lot of different work. What do you recommend, or how do you recommend we contact professionals in that niche to work with us instead of trying to do it on your own without the experience?
Well, as soon as you start to go vertically on a building, the liabilities and the experience and the amount of engineering that's required is a drastic change in the conditions of your business risk for that particular project. So in experience, knowledge of all the most basic wind load, dead load, building code requirements are really prerequisite to getting involved with a lot of those things. As soon as you put a piece of stone vertically, you're creating the potential for a life safety issue. And so the installation of that stone has to be secure with the best possible advice and adherence to the contract documents. So if there is a younger firm or even a firm with a lot of experience, but they've never done exterior cladding, I would say they look for a mentor or a consultant or a structural engineer to work with to get guidance on all of the connections and the type of stone that's used and the thickness to ensure that what you're venturing out to do is going to be in complete client compliance and not pose a long-term risk for you, not just under warranty, because one can still be sued later on after a warranty if something fell down because it wasn't constructed correctly and you didn't know some of the basics or even more advanced details that can cause trouble to the facade. So I guess my word is my advice to anyone interested in going from a fabricator business model into a contractor model, they should clearly understand it's a different set of business requirements. It's a different set of risk, and it is a different set of competencies. It's not good enough to just cut a piece of stone accurately. It has to be put up in a permanent sense, and that isn't always just about the stone anchor, but what we're attaching the stone anchor to. So my advice would be cautious. Certainly you want to grow your business and you want to get into it. I would participate in a lot of the NSI stone manuals and other webinars that are offered on technical issues so that you continue to build your body of knowledge. You know, I learn something every single day, and I'll never stop doing that for as long as I live, because this industry is so diverse and there's so many different little issues that can come up. And that's why I say if you really want to enter into contracting versus just being a fabricator, it would be you'd be well advised to have a mentor with a number of decades in that industry to understand the business model risks, the liabilities, and then the technical requirements that are really required to make sure that you don't end up in a bad situation due to any kind of a failure.
Thanks, Greg. One of the other things we were talking about is when we're dealing in these contracts, a lot of times it's confusing as to who's the customer and who's the client. And you and I both know that the customer, and why don't you elaborate on the payment as versus the appreciation of that?
Yeah, I've always used the little catchphrase that a customer is somebody who pays you and a client is somebody who cares about what you're doing. And that's particularly accurate in the commercial construction world. The general contractors and construction managers are there to perform a building under a certain design in a certain time span. And certainly they want to do a good job, but they're less intimate and attached emotionally, let's say, to the natural stone and its aesthetic qualities and the reasons that it was picked for. So when we do our pre-construction consulting and networking, we have always viewed the general contractor, if we end up working for them, as the customer, and the client is the architect, developer, museum owner, church, whoever it is. And it's important that we always maintain relationships with them to avert any kind of misunderstanding and a problem. And I've often found that really good relationships with clients helps with your relationship with customers.
Yeah, we have that same issue. We find that once we find out who's paying us, that's a good factor. But what we want to know is who's going to approve our work, and that's the person who is quality that really appreciates what we're doing. The other thing I'd like to maybe if we can address is the accreditation for level A and B. I can't think of anybody better, since you were on the accreditation board for commercial contractors, to kind of explain what that is and why it's important to our industry, not necessarily the side, but the whole industry as a whole.
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago, but I recall meeting with you every single quarter and a select group of others in different airport hotel conference rooms over the course of a couple of years. And we developed the accreditation programs for the then Marble Institute, now NSI. And the reason for those accreditations were that we were tired of seeing a lack of professionalism, a lack of competency in our various subsectors of the natural stone industry. We wanted the association to advocate and endorse competency and express that back to the design community and the customer community to say, these are the best folks for the following reasons, and they have passed our accreditation program. Accreditation is basically a gold seal, or it's a standard. It says you are genuinely competent to perform a particular type of work within the jurisdiction of that type of accreditation. So you could be a natural stone fabricator, and you could be the best fabricator of desks, slab showers, staircases, vanities, kitchens, all these sorts of things that are low to the ground, don't pose huge amounts of liability, are aesthetic and require precision fabrication, but you don't necessarily have the same skill sets that a commercial A contractor does to work in downtown Los Angeles or Portland or New York City or Washington, D.C. or Chicago, with a whole different host of issues to contend with versus a single family or even a multifamily residence. So, accreditation is basically a report card on the company as it stands. It discusses, it evaluates your infrastructure, not only in the office, factory, and your construction field sites. It evaluates your safety program in the shop, in the field. It evaluates your financial stability, your ability to be bondable, your credit ratings to a point, although we're not a credit rating agency. And then it evaluates the body of work that you've done within various types of sectors under the 3 different types of accreditation to confirm whether or not you genuinely have the experience to have that standard and to be marketed by the NSI as somebody competent. So if you're able to get through all those things, and it is a bit of work and it's a bit of time to prepare, you have then set yourself apart from competition, and you should deserve all the accolades and promotion abilities from the NSI to be deemed a superior resource for that particular type of work.
Brett, the other thing that I was kind of thinking about is we have two different trades basically when we talk about commercial work. And you mentioned earlier about, basically the countertop commercial work, which, the fabricators fall into real well and actually perform better in many cases than in the commercial applications than the true exterior commercial contractor. When I owned or was part of Intrepid and we did exterior, countertops were kind of the aggravating part of our work, because we did much more complexity with exterior skins and interior lobbies and so forth. One of the things that we look at today is when I look at a commercial contract, sometimes there's part of the trades that our people don't understand or don't know, our craftsmen don't know, like doing a column or so forth. Kind of explain maybe the difference between a craftsman or masonry installer to a countertop installer.
Yeah. A countertop installer is certainly a skilled guy, and he's got a limited amount of rigging ability. He respects the weight and the span of the counter. He understands the coordination with the plumbing fixtures, the electrical fixtures, the cabinetry, the material handling issue to get it up into place, and to do all that without damaging the piece and to get it fully integrated. Every countertop is almost like its own little job, and there are people that specialize in that work, and they're very, very good at it because that is their focus, and they've learned how to really control cost and be efficient in that area. Generally, the folks that do that type of work are not really journeyman masons. A journeyman mason is somebody who's traditionally come up through the trowel trades. He understands mortars, he understands stone, he can work with rough stone and create hand-cut stone, he can work with dimension stone and read the drawings and perform basic trigonometry and geometry to perform layout and installations. Generally, the rigging knowledge of a commercial A contractor mason is far more advanced because we work on all types of scaffolding systems, from swings to mast climbers to pipe scaffold. It's just a completely different environment with quite a bit different skill sets that are not acquired overnight. They're acquired over a long time with a lot of training. On today, all of our foremen and many of our lead masons on the jobs all have OSHA 30. They all have rigging experience and they're certified. They all have scaffold building certified competent person training. They have flag and crane signaling training. They have specialized training for mast climbers, swing scaffolds. They have welding certifications for mild steel to mild steel, stainless to mild, stainless to stainless. They have experience in waterproofing elements, joint sealant applications, insulation applications. So there's a whole host of a lot more training, a lot more diversity in the product types. And it's just a much wider market sector of products that all have to come together. So they are, to me, kind of two distinct skill sets. There is some overlap, and it's not to say somebody can't grow from being a superb countertop installer into a commercial mason. He certainly could do that. I don't think it would be overnight. And in the same respect, not necessarily everybody who's a certified welder who works for me is going to do as nice a job as somebody from Stone Interiors who puts in countertops every single day. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that they are very different skill sets in two different environments.
Yeah, that's the same way we look at it. It's two different trades, really, when you look at it and how they're put together. Okay, Brett, thanks a lot for this section. We're going to move on now. Aaron, I think we're going to go to our video on our sponsors. very good. Well, we're back and we're ready to get into the design community. So we have a couple of questions, or at least our poll question, which is how have you cultivated relationships with the design community in the past? Please fill us out, because I think Daisha and Brett and I will go in a different direction here based on your responses here. So please fill us in on that poll as we go forward. I really appreciate Daisha being with us today. She's had a lot of experience in the design community in trying to get representatives and to represent the Natural Stone Institute and also the Natural Stone in the design community. So let's see how the poll came out, and we can go on to the next thing here. Provide lunch and learns, 29%. Speak at design conferences, that's 6%. Provide individual consultant, 35%. And we've never cultivated a relationship with designers. One of the things we want to do is work with these designers. And as we get into the first questions, Daisha, of the design community, it's one of the most important things in our businesses is when we're dealing with designers, knowing who we're dealing with, what we're dealing with, and who's the customer in a lot of cases too, because they are professionals and they definitely want to be recognized as professionals. Kind of tell us a little bit of the techniques that you have in setting up customers and expectations with designers.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, it's about building that relationship, earning their trust. And we need to go into it as knowledgeable as we absolutely can be. Educate yourself until I leave this industry, and probably until I pass away. I'm going to educate myself and learn as much as I can. I learn every day something new, and I think it's just really important to build that knowledge base in order to be effective in communicating with them. You have to listen. You need to help them tell you what their vision is so that you can solve for that vision. And sometimes that's can be difficult. It takes really good communication skills. So you have your knowledge base, you listen, and then you solve their problem or their vision. I wouldn't call it a problem. And so that's what I look at, setting up that building that relationship. It all revolves around those three things. If you come to a particular project that they've already specified everything, it's really important to be cognizant of the fact that they have an emotional attachment, just like their client, to their design. And so it's about having that conversation and solving for it. Perhaps they've picked something that's not great for that application. Well, listen and see what it is that they're trying to achieve. Is it a durability factor? Is it an aesthetic? Is this a home that is spent 2 weeks out of a year in, or if this is something that is lived in every day by a really great big family? It's really important to understand all of those things, and you just have to ask those questions because it's your job to solve their vision with honesty and integrity. And the more you know, the better you can be effective at that.
Right. Thanks. The other aspect that we look at is, a lot of times we do the lunch and learns and the different types of educational venues. I know in our company, we do a good bit of the lunch and learns for the ASID and the NKBA and all of the different functions of designers, just to get recognition to those designers of different products. And of course, our company, you're not supposed to be too promotional, but everybody has a promotion when you're the presenter. I know the Natural Stone Institute has certified speakers. So if a fabricator, can you guys explain if a fabricator doesn't necessarily, or a commercial contractor doesn't necessarily have a person on staff, how they can go through our process with the Natural Stone Institute to have these events.
Absolutely. That is the first chance to get in the door, to meet, to become that that go-to person for natural stone. It's super important for us to educate ourselves and our clients and design communities. Yes, we do have a CEU program. We have complete presentations that are certified for ASID, AIA, NKBA, ASLA, and there's one or two that are also USGBC accredited. And that allows you to give them a learning credit toward their ongoing, I'm losing my word, their ongoing accreditation.
Right.
They were a number of learning units for that. And so it's a really, really great way to introduce yourself and your company to these design community members, if you don't already have those connections.
Right. Yeah, we really, and even if you have, and I know we try to do an event every couple of, at least twice a year, we try to do an event for our clients. And we do either lunch and learn or dinner or wine. I really like some of the advantages the Natural Stone Institute has in especially in the Women in Stone, where we do wine and stone. That's a real nice event to get designers in to really appreciate your company. I know a lot of the distributors have used that, but fabricators should use that too. And if they check the NSI out, I think they'll find that there's a lot of ways to connect to these designers and be a benefit to them, like you're saying. Tell us a little bit about the relationships between designers, the two different basic types. One is the one who wants to run the project and act as a contractor, as compared to the true designer who works with the client and you to make a successful project.
Absolutely. We have to be really, really cognizant of where they are and how they like to do business. And we have to adapt to that. We hope that it's a collaborative effort. And the way you do that, the way we get to that position is to actually build the relationship in advance. And maybe this is the first time you've worked with this designer, but if you can earn their trust and you can build that relationship, then you're going to make them look like a rock star, and you're going to make them have the experience that they'll come back to you each time for that same product of natural stone. Also, it's important to recognize that if you haven't had the opportunity to set expectations in advance, it does allow for a little bit of difficulty at the end if we don't have agreement on an installation or a product application, the stone application. So it's really important to work and communicate all the way through the process. Listen and solve all the way through. And hopefully, if you've done your job, at the end of the day, if there is a challenge, then you work together to solve it.
Great. You know, we have designers pose a little bit of a problem from time to time with fabricators and or other construction people, just like architects do, because a lot of times the specifications and the designs that they perform are not always exactly what should be done, or not clearly interpreted to the fabricator. And therefore a customer will have a disapproval of something, and the designer sometimes will be your best asset and sometimes they'll be your worst nightmare. You have any recommendations on when it becomes a worst nightmare? We love the best asset, you know, but it's when they become the worst nightmare of how they should or would support us as fabricators and contractors.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to think about how you set those expectations all the way through. And if you see a red flag, if you see that that's not a great option or application of that particular stone in that space, say something. Give them a solution. Find something that looks like that or that has that same feel, but is going to be more effective in that application. Solve for them, become their teammate, and then you can often avoid those problems. If it comes down to, I have had situations where I did not recommend a particular stone for a particular application, and we chose to walk away. If they can, we just did not, we wouldn't warranty it. We told them it was not a good idea, and we walked away. And I think you need to be able to do that. I think you need to maintain your integrity and honesty. And it's more about doing the right thing than it is doing everything. At least that's my opinion on that. But we do also have stone consultants in the industry that we can get involved, third-party stone consultants that go really far south. We can engage their knowledge and expertise.
That's the good part about the Natural Stone Institute. We have a lot of people in our association that can help and are always willing to help too. One of the things we look at today, one of the things I've been looking at today in the design community is colors. Colors is a big aspect in our design community today. And a lot of those colors sometimes give us difficulty, number one, in finding sources, and number two, in proper applications. We use in our company now a lot of marble on our countertops, and quartzite is becoming real popular too. How do you feel the design community is looking at those products today?
I think there's still some myths out there. I think that it's our job to explain to them how that material is going to evolve and live within that space. GK, I've heard you say before that, I'm not the same I was 20 years ago. Well, I'm not the same I was 20 years ago. Neither are my countertops, but that's the beauty of it. It's about patina. It's about growing into your space. It's about evolving. So I think it's just really important for us to set the expectations and let them know exactly what it's going to do, how it will perform, and what things they can do should something occur. The nice thing about natural stone is it's restorable. It's refinishable. We can fix anything, almost. Short of somebody taking a sledgehammer to it. We have the ability to restore surfaces and those finishes and fix chips or fix a crack, unlike a lot of other materials that are out in the market today. And I think it's really important for us to remind the designers that, yes, it will age, but it will age beautifully, just like we all do.
Yep. That's one of the big things that we've been able to successfully look at with designers, because for years they've always loved the marble look, but they didn't like the utilitarian purpose of the marble. Well, with sealers that in honing the materials, that's become better. But what really has kind of attacked the residential and our light commercial market with home interior retail is the quartzite, because it has the utilitarian usefulness of it. It doesn't etch and stain as marble does, but at the same time, there are many quartzites that just really look like marble and give that wonderful, beautiful blend. Have you experienced that out in the field too, also?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are many, many stunningly beautiful marble-like quartzites. In fact, my kitchen has a quartzite that is marble-esque. And I mean, it's so beautiful, and it is utilitarian. What's really important for people to understand, though, is that that we need to ensure that the material is truly a quartzite. There are some things out in the market, unfortunately, that are listed as a quartzite, and they're just dolomitic marbles. So they will edge. And then there's nothing worse than a client feeling like they were taken advantage of or they didn't get what they were sold. And so it's really important for us in the stone industry to be very, very clear and to make absolutely sure that what we're selling to people is what it is. A white Makubus is a lot different than super white.
Right.
I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
important to make those distinctions. And I think it's important for us to manage that all the way through. We can almost always find a natural stone that will fit their budget and their aesthetic values that they're looking for and the color that they want, if they're willing to open their mind and to look a little bit further than just what's right in front of me.
Right.
So I think that's our job, is to be
Well, thank
honest
you.
and forthright.
Thank you, Daisha. I appreciate that. Thanks for this session too. We're going to move on now to the sponsor, B&B Industries and Intermac. And I want to thank. Okay, we're back. We're back to poll 3 now. And this one, it says, does your company currently have a structure in place to review commercial contracts? And this side of the section, we're going to start talking specifically about contracts, how you walk away, stay, what are in them, and maybe some big pitfalls that all of our companies need to address when we start doing commercial jobs. You know, as my career in the industry, I was originally a commercial contractor, and you know, we had an attorney on staff. We had a lot of things that we reviewed our contracts and made sure that we weren't setting ourselves up for failure the day we signed the contract. So we'll talk a little bit about that. When going into the residential area and the countertop area, you know, our contracts there are a lot simpler, and because the jobs are usually much quicker. They're, you know, the whole length of a job may be 3 weeks from sales to completion, whereas a commercial contract may be, you know, 6 months to 3 or 4 years. Okay, let's see how this came out on our poll. So a lot of us, 59% of us don't have a structure, and 41% of us do have a structure. That's really good. It would be nice for everybody to have a structure. If you're going to do commercial work, it would be very good for us to have a structure. One of the things that you know I like to talk about is knowing what's in the contract. Brett, would you like to kind of start on the contract side of the commercial contracts?
Sure. We review every single boilerplate contract and the scope specific portion for every project. Many of these commercial contracts have been developed over years with extensive amount of hours by very skilled attorneys, and they're really about risk aversion and risk containment and pushing all the risk down to the subcontract level. So to sign a commercial contract, you have to have a very high level of risk tolerance because many of the items that are not very palatable will not be changed by most general contractors. For example, payment terms. There is a term in the commercial world called paid when paid. There's another term called paid if paid. These types of terms guarantee the construction manager that they don't have to pay you, even though you've completed your work, if they're not paid by the owner. This is a very tricky, slippery slope. It causes a lot of heartache with long delayed payments, and it basically means your contractual relationship and ability to get paid is only as good as the relationship between the owner and the construction manager. If those two have fights and they stop paying each other, there is no inherent obligation for you to be paid by the construction manager for the stonework. That's something you always want to look at. If you can get out of it, all the better. I would say try to. Sometimes if you're new to the industry and you've got really competitive prices, you might find that certain construction managers will waive those things because they find your proposal to be very attractive. So it's worth trying. Indemnity and insurance. Generally, insurance levels within the commercial industry are much higher than residential, or even light commercial. It's very not uncommon to have $5 or $10 million general liability umbrellas. Statutory limits for workers' comp shouldn't be really any different than the limits that you have commercially. They might also ask you for professional liability insurance. Well, what is professional liability insurance? That is an insurance policy that somebody with a professional accreditation holds, such as an architect, a structural engineer, and that sort of thing. Generally, as a contractor or fabricator, you can't purchase professional liability insurance. It has to be purchased by the licensed individual who could be your subcontractor. Now, if you do have in-house structural engineers, you might be able to get that policy. They're very expensive, and the limits on those keep going up every year. It's not uncommon to see $2 and $3 million limits now on professional liability. So we see those things all the time. Another one to look for that sticks its head up a lot on commercial work is mold insurance. It's not cheap. It's not in most standard portfolios of commercial and construction insurance, and it poses certain liabilities to you. I would try and avoid it again as much as possible. We have had a couple of clients that insisted on it. We made them pay for the policy. These were contractors coming out of California, and they had a whole different set of legal concerns than people on the East Coast. Warranty periods. Warranties are very, very critical. They're not often spelled out on the drawings. They're usually embedded in the specifications, or what we call the general condition specifications that define everything on the project, not just the stonework. It's very common to have a 1-year warranty. Usually the commencement is what we call substantial completion. That's basically when the building has been deemed by the inspectors to be occupiable, and then it's a transfer of the building from construction to an occupied structure. That's usually when warranties kick off. Warranties are a corporate guarantee that you will go back within a certain specified time period to fix or repair things. So you've got to be very careful about them. We often see 5-year warranties now, particularly on very high-end cladding, and we get clients asking for 10-year warranties. We do not sign 10-year warranties. We will tell them straight up from the beginning, well, what's the price? There is no price. We're not offering a 10-year warranty. So be very careful about that. It's not child's play. If you take a contract and sign it, and then you refuse to provide that warranty, you will not get paid the rest of your contract. Now, then the construction manager will have to come up with a way to create the warranty that he bought from you to be compliant with his contractor. And I assure you, you won't get paid the full amount that's due to you. Warranties are very careful. You need to study the language very carefully, and you need to understand if any of the obligations within warranty can be diverted to manufacturer warranties. Generally, stone suppliers are not going to give much of a warranty. It might be a year, and it's only good for the material. But there's a lot of wiggle room for them, depending on how you handled it, anchored it, if you prepped it and cut it after you took possession of it. The biggest things that you want to look at in warranty is when you get into joint sealant, which is what you often call caulking, insulation, and waterproofing. Those are the things that cause most building owners maintenance issues. And those are the things that are usually people get called back on. So in the curtain wall industry, the subject matter of warranty and the pass-through to the material suppliers, the Dow Cornings, the Pecoras, the General Electrics that produce the actual caulking, can often be procured for 20-year warranties on material. Even in the case where a material supplier wants to offer 20, we're always very careful to qualify that our warranty is 1 year. We'll give you the pass-through warranty from the material supplier, and a lot of times that's fine. But as time has gone on, the subject matter of extended warranties and very rigid warranties has become much more prevalent. So the question was, do we review contracts? Yes, we do. We review them all. And generally we will sign most contracts, but there are some times where we find there are issues that we will not agree to, and we will avoid that job. I often tell people the last right you have in this commercial construction world is before you sign the contract. Because once you sign the contract, it's an uphill battle with a document that is heavily weighted to the other side of this equation. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about with customer relations and clients, and having a client on your shoulder to look out for your interest and to help you stay within the guidelines as much as possible by you doing your work is also a great benefit. It's not going to change the language of the contract, but it's another positive step towards trying to stay safe within the confines of your contract. So contract review is very, very important. The jurisdiction for disputes is important. Are you going to litigate? If you're doing an out-of-town job and you're from Little Rock, Arkansas, and this job is in Topeka, Kansas, are you prepared to go to Topeka to settle all the claims and charges if you end up in court? Generally, the jurisdiction is weighted to the person issuing the contract. I always tell people that commercial construction is one of the only industries where you sell things and you have to sign somebody else's agreement. Unlike a manufacturer like Stone Interiors and others, most likely they issue a contract, their terms and conditions are defined, and somebody else signs it. He's the seller, he created the contract. One of the big differentiators in commercial work is that we have to sign somebody else's contract 95% of the time. Those contracts are very well thought out and they are generally immovable. And if you are not going to sign and you have problems with the boilerplate, and even though your price is great and you're competent, most likely they won't break their risk model and they will kick you out of the decision-making process and find somebody else that will keep their business model, their legal risk model contained. So it's absolutely important that you review them. Again, as a quick recap, your terms and conditions. What are your paid when paid, your indemnification and insurance, your warranty, and then of course your schedule. You are always better suited having a defined schedule. Many contracts are issued today with a very gray language on that allows the client or the customer, the general contractor, to change the schedule at whim and require for you to have multiple mobilizations, not just one, all to suit their needs. And a lot of these changes have been made to eliminate claims and change orders later on by people who are disgruntled with the way the process went. It's always best to have the delivery date of the stone known and the duration date for the installation with an agreed to sequence. You also need to be careful about language that requires you to include any and all overtime to meet the schedule. And again, the schedule is often defined as something that can be modified to their liking anytime. So a lot of careful language that you need to review to make sure all of these fit within your business model and the way you estimated the job. It's a very critical thing.
Right. Brett, can we touch real quick on bonding? Because one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about bonds is that it is forever. You know, so if a building fails 20 years later and the bonding company is called in and found that there was an error, that bonding, if you've indemnified to that bonding company, they can be like me, you know, an old man sitting on my front porch, and they can come knock and take my company away. Speak a little bit about the bonding of it.
Okay, so let's start with what is a bond. Bond is basically an insurance policy that would be held by your client that guarantees from a third party that if XYZ Stone falls down, goes bankrupt, can't complete the project, that bonding company for the same price will step in, apply financial resources, seek other talent, or take the remnants of this failing company to complete the project for the same fixed price. That is what a bond is. There are two types of bonds. There are payment bonds and performance bonds. Payment bonds basically guarantee that I will pay GK for the stone. If I don't, that bond covers the fact that I took the money on the federal courthouse and I didn't pay it to GK, who I owed it to, and I went and bought another house for myself and I failed to pay him. That performance bond would cover GK getting paid. That's the performance piece. That's the payment piece. The performance piece is what I spoke about earlier, which is the ability to finish the job for the guaranteed fixed price. How do we get bonds? Bonds are issued by surety companies that are special insurance companies that have deep actuarial departments that provide great in-depth analytical reviews of a company's performance over many years, the assets that they have in place. They interview the owners and the principals of the company, and you develop what's known as a relationship. And they're going to assess whether or not you're a worthy risk. So getting a bond is not a guarantee. You have to have a relationship in place. You're going to have assets. There are a lot of different ratios that people use to determine what's an adequate level of assets relative to the bonding program. But one of the things we get asked all the time in pre-qualification questionnaires that are very common now from construction managers who want to know everything about your company is they want to know your single job bonding limit and your gross bonding capacity. Those are two different things. A single job might be the biggest bond we're going to give you is $1 million, and the most at any one time we're going to give you is 3 or 4, or it could be completely bigger. But those are two criteria. So you got to have a relationship, which is getting to know somebody. You're going to take extensive interviews. They're going to look at all your financial statements. They're going to look at your past track record. They're going to see if you've been in court, if you've had warranty problems, what your safety issues are like. And all that boils down to an assessment of whether or not you're a good risk, because it's their risk for a pretty menial fee. You know, bonds as a cost to the marketplace are anywhere from 1.5% to 2%, a little higher if you're really brand new. And that's on top of your price. And that's something you should always carve out in your proposals and add as a fee if somebody is entertaining bonds. Once you get a bonding relationship, you're going to have to maintain that relationship on a quarterly, if not yearly basis with in-person interviews, financial statement reviews, where they're going to look at the long form of your estimate of your financial statements and understand your performance and predictability on the bigger, riskier jobs, whether they were bonded or not bonded, because it all builds down to the bonding agent's personal final opinion. Although the actuaries have a lot of input on it from a dollar and cents standpoint, you're going to have a personal relationship with the bonding agent where they eventually take faith in your ability to perform. So that's what bonds are. Bonds generally are for the duration of the warrantable period. They are not for lifetime, in my experience. So if my warranty is for 1 year, the bond will probably follow that for 1 year. If it's a 5-year project, the bond will be covering performance for the warranty portion, assuming that we got to that point, in that 5-year period. Bonding companies hate 10-year programs. They do not want any part of any 10-year obligation. So that's another easy excuse for you when somebody's asking you for a 10-year. The surety companies will not endorse it. And that's pretty well recognized through all the exterior envelope trades, the roofers, the curtain wall contractors, and the stone contractors. So, you know, we have a project now that's a 6 or 7 year project, and we had to split it into 2 phases to tackle the 5-year bonded warranties because they would not provide 7 to 10 year at the end of a completion. So, you know, these are all the finer points in negotiation when you get into commercial work and you run into bonding. One last note about bonding: unless your company is completely liquid and stands on its own, you have a banking relationship, maybe you have a line of credit, but you do not rely on the bank for your daily operations, and that perhaps you've got 2 or 3 times annual expenses in cash sitting in that company, you will probably have to be required to be personally indemnified. That means your personal residence, your personal assets, everything you own is also on the line with the bonding company. So it's not just your company, it will be you personally. So bonds are very serious business, and do not take them lightly. If you can avoid bonding work, do it all the time. It just mitigates your own personal and corporate risk as you go forward. But as your company gets more and more established, this is another part of doing bigger, more complicated work, because bigger, more complicated clients with demanding designs want guarantees because they have lawyers in their ears who want these guarantees because that fits into their business model. So these are all little pointers about what bonding is and what it isn't. There's a lot more to talk about in that, but I would just say never take it lightly, and also understand that unless you're really cash solvent, really, you're going to end up with personal indemnity, and that's very serious business.
Yeah. Thank you, Brett. The other side as we close up, because we could talk for hours on all of these issues, but and there are more, and we'll have other events as we go forward with it. But one of the things that we always know is know when to walk away. I remember a guy telling me to use the old Kenny Rogers technique, you know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. There are contracts. Sometimes the best contract out there is the one you walk away from. So don't be afraid if you're not comfortable to walk away because it may be the one that really gives you the most trouble. I've had that experience personally with my former company, and sometimes there was one that I wish I'd have walked away a long time. We knew all the signals up front, but we just kept going after the wrong project. Okay, what we'll do now is go into our video with Park Industries and Integra and go from there. Okay, we're back, and this is the time that we ask for questions from our participants and or from our audience. We'd like to thank you for attending. Mark, have we got any additional questions out there at this time?
Yeah, I know we talked about it the other day, but can you guys get into some more detail about additional expenses or challenges on commercial projects that might not exist on retail or residential work?
Oh, good. Yeah. Brett, you want to address that area too? I mean, we could go on for days about additional expenses on that.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with safety. You know, in the last 15 years, safety has changed not 180 degrees, but 360 degrees. And OSHA has really ratcheted up the amount of PPE we need to provide and the date-sensitive expiration date of it. What do I mean by that? Well, not hard hats don't last forever. Neither do vests, and neither do safety harnesses, which can get quite expensive. Safety harnesses are either full body or around the waist. We only use full body, and the lanyards and ropes that go with those for fall protection. So a lot of expenses in those things. Miscellaneous material, consumable expenses on job sites are far greater than a shop environment. It's always chaotic. You always seem to need something, and it's, you know, there's just always expenses for lots of little things. We calculate that as a percent of our labor on every job on, you know, over 2 decades of working in various types of jobs, and we have a good handle on what that can be. But there's many types of those expenses that you need. You will get things stolen, unfortunately. You are no longer in a controlled environment. You are now in the circus with all the other people who are around you. And you have to prepare yourself for that. It's very frustrating. So if you bring new tools and equipment on the job, you better lock them up in a secure gang box and make sure you've got fresh keys that not everybody else has a copy of, because that happens. Rigging equipment are, you know, on every single job is always another area where we have theft, and they're expensive items. Aluminum beams are not throwaway, neither is steel. Those are things. Good caulking guns, care and custody of hand tools, grinders, drills, belt sanders, welding equipment, welding leads. All of these things today, if OSHA sees a problem, you don't have the guard on, you've lost the guard, you've got a cut in the cord, one of the ground prong is gone on a grinder. All of these are finable activities, and therefore what happens is the cost of tools today is almost, unfortunately, so cheap, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't often save you money to repair them. We've been struggling with this issue for years. Tools are not also designed to last as long as they did before. But because of the OSHA requirements and safety requirements, you're forever turning them over. So miscellaneous tool expense, and I'm not talking about blades and bits, I'm just talking about the actual drills and the grinders and the skill saws and the worm saws, all have a tangible expense that you need to account for and learn your own estimating. It doesn't mean in a small group you can't take great care and custody of your equipment, but if you start to grow to 50, 60 people on a job site, you're going to get 50 or 60 people's ways of doing things. No matter how hard you try and enforce your way of doing things, which means take care of your tools every day, you will have offenders, and it does add cost to you. Traditionally, the industry does not expect the workman to provide all his own tools. You are expected to provide that. So tools and miscellaneous materials are big expenses. They're constantly ongoing. And because of today's safety laws, you have to retire tools a lot sooner than you used to. And you better police and green tag them every day, because those are offenses if you get caught. And the OSHA fines just keep going up every single year.
Another thing that we've seen over the years too, Brett, is logistics. You know, whether you're working maybe at an airport and and you have to park your car and take a bus in or whatever, or even in a high-rise commercial application where you're waiting for a buck hoist or an elevator to get up, and you can spend several hours waiting for your particular material to get to a location. That's just wasted time that you may not have in a residential type, or you would not have in a residential type application.
Unloading and distribution is an activity within a commercial estimate properly developed. Do not assume that you're going to pull up, everybody's going to applaud, and they're going to get out of your way so you can go in and efficiently install your material as quick as possible and get out of there. Unfortunately, it's not always a team environment, and there are waiting times for hoists, for cranes, for those types of things. I would also caution you, never load the job with the material well in advance of the need. It will get damaged, it will get stained, it will get broken, it will get moved 5 or 6 times, and not always by you, and it'll get damaged. And the contractor is going to say to you, well, why'd you put it on the job? I didn't tell them to move it. So what? They moved it. It was in the way. It's your fault. You have insurance. So be very careful about your material, and it's a constant monitoring to make sure when is the right time to deliver and to get your access, and make extreme efforts to coordinate your time on the elevator. And if somebody isn't holding up their end, then you can make some threats that they owe you time for downtime. But don't assume it's just drop and go all the time. In commercial work, there's a much more shared event when it comes to the time on the job to move your material around.
Right. Mark, do we have any other questions there?
Yeah, hey, Brett. Can I use my regular residential install crews on jobs that may require, prevailing wage or union workers, things like that? Can you get in a little bit about that?
Sure. Let's clear up a couple of terms that you just talked about. Union wages, prevailing wages. Okay. The word prevailing wage is generally describing federally mandated Davis-Bacon wage rates, which is a published rate on federally funded projects at the beginning of a project. And it states all the prevailing wage and benefit packets for every trade for that particular project. That then becomes the legal minimum that you must pay on that particular project. So if you're a curtain countertop installer and you don't have a union workforce, chances are you will be paying people to go on that job a raise for you to meet the prevailing wage. It does not mean that you need to put them in a union. And we'll get into this in a minute. It just means you need to meet the wage minimum and the benefit. And there's 2 categories within the Davis-Bacon wage schedule. So if you're bidding a federally funded job, one of the things you need to understand from the beginning, is there a wage scale on this project? Is there a Davis-Bacon? And generally a well-organized project will issue those rates at the beginning of the bid period, and that rate is the minimum that you must pay for the duration of the project under different trades. Now, let's talk about the different trades under prevailing wage. If you're just if I'm going in to do a marble lobby, those trades are already well defined. The marble mason is well defined and the finisher is defined. I can't wiggle out of that and try and use a carpenter or use an iron worker who might be a little cheaper than a stonemason to do that work. You can make assignments. It's very elaborate. You got to go into appeals. I wouldn't recommend it. Prevailing wage does not mean you need to join the union. It means you need to pay a minimum amount. And you will probably also have to have the ability to issue certified payrolls. So your accounting department will have to issue certified payrolls because Davis-Bacon prevailing wage jobs often have audits. And with these audits, they can request your certified payrolls to ascertain that you paid that wage and benefit package. Now, if you don't offer benefits, that's fine. You have to roll the benefit piece into the wages to come up with the total package in the envelope. There's a lot more description you can get onto that. It kind of gets heavy accounting, but that's something you need to understand. So you got to be able to issue certified payrolls. Generally, certified payrolls are going to accompany your monthly requisition as part of the preparation of the requisition, meaning your pay application. So if you're going to enter a project that has prevailing wage, you have to know how to produce certified payrolls, and you have to be able to meet those limits. That might involve a one-time raise for these guys to go on there if you're a non-union contractor. Now, Generally, what happens is various unions in urban environments follow the federal prevailing wages, and they solicit past experiences and their current contracts to the federal government to sustain the prevailing wage as close to or higher than the current prevailing union wage. So oftentimes prevailing wage and the current union packages are very close or identical at the onset of a project. So let's say it's a 5-year job, for example, and the Davis-Bacon is issued in the year 2020. Most unions will get raises every year, every 3 years, whatever it might be. If you're a union contractor on a prevailing wage job and you've signed a union contract, you have 2 obligations. One, to meet the minimum of the prevailing wage. The second one, to pay your current obligation for the union contract, which trumps prevailing wage. So that means even though the prevailing wage was bid at $20 an hour, if your union agreement in year 2 and 3 is at $22 an hour, you're paying $22 an hour. And then in year 4, you're paying $24 an hour, not the 20 that your non-union competitor would be legally obligated to do. Signing up with unions is a whole different webinar. We'll have to talk about that with GK, but that's a different subject matter. But that's a little breakdown and background about the difference between prevailing wage, what that means to you on federal projects. Now, there are times where prevailing wage will also show up on state-funded projects. It is rare that we see prevailing wage requirements on private entities, but not unheard of. Okay, so that's a little breakdown there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we have seen prevailing wages in, and you do that mainly in like airport for countertops, for airport projects and those types of things where you have to do certified payroll. If you're not familiar with certified payroll, please, if you're getting on to any type of government job, make sure you understand what you're going to have to do, because they will not pay you if you don't send those certified payrolls in.
Right.
Mark, any other questions there, sir?
Yeah, more on the sales side. If I'm doing primarily residential or multifamily, residential work, what do you tell a sales team or to look for to start finding commercial projects that won't extend my risk or can minimize risk to the company?
One of the things that I'll take that first, Brett, but one of the things that really concerns me is, Brett talked about commercial, a multi-family condos where you have 300 or 400 condos, those are commercial jobs, and you are dealing with a commercial contractor, the Henry C. Becks of the world or whoever, the Turners, because they're building those condos. So you're going to have the same contractual obligations that you would if you were doing the exterior skins and masonry. But the big difference is the preparation of those things. As you start bidding that work, make sure you know that you're going to have to do the logistics that we were talking about, how to get your tops up to those floor lines. Yes, you're still only doing a countertop, and a countertop for countertop contractors is, we know how to do that. But there's a whole new section that you have to worry about, including the contracts, including the logistics, including the knowing when to walk away and not. So be very careful. And then if you're using subcontractors, you better make sure that your subcontractors have the ability to perform and to give the same insurance and details that you would have to give to the general contractor. Breck, do you have any additional on that?
No, I think you covered it quite well. I mean, trying to grow a business will never be without risk, but it has to be measurable, intelligent risk, tolerable risk. When you go onto these federal type projects, even though you're competent, there are already a set of rules that you have to adhere to. You just talked about that, the certified payrolls, the safety plans. You will now be able to you will have to write programs called activity hazard analysis, AHAs. These are whole diagrammatic narratives that describe the potential for an accident and how you will avoid that. It seems like nonsense for common sense, but it's required by a lot of these big projects, and we spend a ton of time writing this for very complex exterior projects. So the whole day of saying, hey, you really know what you're doing, I trust you, is sort of out the window, because of the pressure on safety and the insurance companies who want to mitigate every bit of potential risk for injuries. I think there's another interesting thing we've talked about, which is we haven't touched on today when it talks about growth and expanding yourself from the factory to the job site. Once you start entering these job sites, you have different categories of workers' compensation insurance. And you have what's known as an EMR. An EMR is a rating based upon your past experience for accidents. And an EMR is also a measuring stick that's used to pre-qualify the safety level and record of a company before it's allowed to enter. For example, pharmaceutical projects. Let's say you ended up with a great countertop opportunity and you were the best price and the best company to do it, but your EMR was 1.9 and they will only allow people less than 1. You won't be getting in the door. So one of the big wake-up calls when you move from your controlled environment in the factory in single-family homes as to you go to urban job sites is there's a lot more oversight, there's a lot more measuring sticks, and safety is a really big area where you have to probably enlist a safety consultant. It's an expense, and you're going to have to build it into what you're doing to educate your staff and your workmen, and people have to buy into it. If you do not have buy-in, it'll never work. And you won't be able to survive in the commercial side if you don't have that corporate buy-in on the safety. So EMR is a very big statistical factor. For us, we just had a really nice nose that we got our EMR down to 0.87, which anytime anybody's below 1 is a really big accomplishment, and it speaks to a really good safety record over the last 3 years. And that's something we're very proud of. And the EMR also relates to your premium and how much you will pay. So the higher your EMR, the less desirable you are, the higher your rates go. The lower your EMR, awesome. Yeah, right. The lower your
EMR. A good point. The EMR is excellent because now when you're shopping, and if you have to shop insurance companies, that's the first thing they look at is your history of your incidents, which is your EMR. And I remember one time at my former company, we were at 1.89 and could barely get contracts. We brought it down to an 0.89, and we were insured all over the place. We could get very competitive insurance rates. And in our industry, a lot of people don't pay attention to insurance rates because if a workman's comp rate is $15 per 1,000 or per 100, and you got an EMR of 198, that means it's $30 per payroll dollar. So it's doubling your cost of your payroll insurance dollars. So it's a major cost and a major competitive edge for companies like us that keep it real low. So that's good.
There's one other point we really need to talk about on that, and that's for companies that, are a little new to this area and are considering moving into different market sectors. So let's say you live in an area like I do, and you've got any one of a dozen states within 4 hours. Every one of those regions most likely is going to have different workers' compensation rates that are statutory based upon the experience mod of the industry in that region. So the insurance for me in Virginia will not be the same as the cost of New York City. And as you grow and as you bid work in other areas, it is really critical that you get quotes going into any bid from your insurance agent with the type of trades you're going to use, whether it's a stonemason, a finisher, carpenter, whatever it is, so that you are bidding the job with the correct cost. Generally, it's priced per $100 of payroll going into the job. And you will find that there are certain jurisdictions in the country with much, much higher workers' compensation rates, even though you have a good EMR, because the risk in that marketplace is already proven to be very high. So no matter who goes in, even if you're perfect, the rates could be 2 or 3 times what you're used to in your more common marketplace. The rates will be different because the risk environment is different. Working in your shop will be a much lower rate than going on a job site. Do not assume that you can carry those same rates. So get your insurance agent in the office and talk about your growth ideas so that you get a really good understanding of the workers' comp jurisdiction pricing based upon the region that you're working in or that you would bid. So if you're going to go out of town to some new area and it's an urban area, chances are it's going to be a lot higher than where you came from if you're from a rural area. Those are very important things. That could be a big wake-up call too. So a lot more planning has got to be done on the insurance as you even look at your bids.
Right. Mark, anything else? We're getting pretty much to the end now.
Yeah, let's go for one more question, GK. I think this will be probably mostly for Dacia, but you indicated that designers often specify stone based on visual aesthetics over performance. What techniques or resources are available to help influence them to pick a more appropriate stone?
First and foremost, it's the salesperson's knowledge and the ability to understand what they truly, truly want. We also have a consumer website, usenaturalstone.org, that is a great resource for end users and customers and designers to read about different stone types and to really try to understand more. There is a great article on there about being your own stone sleuth and how to be able to take a sample and figure out what the true properties are going to be. Is it going to stay? Is it going to etch? Then it's also about just educating them on, again, stone can be restored. It can live and evolve with a home in its space, and it should be expected to. But I think it's really, really important to manage that expectation all the way through the process.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I know the Natural Stone Institute has a lot of assistance too with reference to materials and so forth. But you know, looking and getting some research done for a customer is real important in trying to develop a pattern of resources. I think the Natural Stone Institute has quite a few of them out there with their catalogs and so forth. Okay, Mark, I think that's where we are for the day. Dacia and Brett, thanks a whole lot. Y'all have made my job real easy today, I can say that. And I hope our attendees have appreciated the knowledge that both of you have. We'd like to turn it back over to Aaron now, and we can do the closing.
Thank you, GK. I want to thank GK, Brett, and Dacia for a great discussion. Let's all give them a virtual round of applause. They did provide a lot of great information for us moving forward. Thank you, everybody who attended the past 2 days. You will receive an email with a recording of this session so you can review it and also pass it along to some of your colleagues. This recording for both days will also be added to the Stone Industry Education page, which is www.stoneindustryeducation.com, and also the Natural Stone University, which can be found at www.uofstone.com. Coming up, we actually have 4 more virtual stone summits coming up in this year's term. You can find out more information about those and sign up for those at www.stoneindustryeducation.com. And once again, I want to thank the panel for everything that they provided the past couple of days. And please feel free to contact us if we can provide additional information. Thank you.
Thank you.